So, T.S. Eliot, another American artist and literary critic. Unlike Ezra Pound, who used to translate the material and the voices coming from the past, T.S. Eliot preferred quotations. The difference between these forms, translation on one hand and quotation on the other, is a way to understand the basic differences between Ezra Pound and T.S. Eliot. And through them, through translation and quotation, to think about the possible relations of modern poetry to the literature of the past, because we do know that what's new, what's really modern, in the sense that modus hodiernus, that is the way we do things today, and the idea of cutting away tradition, that is this kind of father to son transmission of classical literature. So translation and quotation are two ways of relating oneself to the past. Ezra Pound aims at making it all new. This is a quotation from Ezra Pound. Pound wanted to make the past new. He wanted to make the past a living thing. So he translated the past. A translated phrase, even from a faraway culture in space and time. Take an ancient Chinese phrase translated into modern terms has to be perceived as alive, as modern, as contemporary. So Ezra Pound aims at carrying culture to us as a kind of living thing, a living thing. And I would say an immediate thing, because he doesn't even want to be a medium between us and the past. The reader has to be in touch with the past as if it were a living thing, a contemporary thing, which is there. It's there with us. The past has to be renewed in translation and has to be communicated in modern terms. So the past has to be re-embodied and reshaped continuously over and over, even in the future. So we have translation. Now, going to T.S. Eliot's relation to the past. And he wrote an essay, Tradition and Individual Talent. So his main purpose was to investigate the way a modern talent, a contemporary talent, has to deal with what has already been said and done. Maybe because both Eliot and Pound, coming from the United States, coming to Europe, had to find their place in a complex tradition. How would T.S. Eliot relate himself to John Milton, to Dante, to Homer, to Virgil? That is, to tradition. What is a quotation? In a way, when somebody quotes somebody else, they show a deference, a respect to the past, to what has been said and written. But on the other hand, a quotation may also imply some kind of violation of it. When we quote someone, we mean either to honor this person or to make some kind of mockery or to mock them. Okay, so Ezra Pound translated, T.S. Eliot quoted. T.S. Eliot, he was born in Missouri, so in the US, in 1888. He studied at Harvard University, and in 1910 he moved to Paris, then to England in 1914. He met many artists and writers, and in particular he met Ezra Pound in London, and Ezra Pound helped him publish his works, especially The Wasteland. In 1927, that is before Eliot converted to the Anglican religion, Eliot became a British citizen and published his masterpiece, The Wasteland, which dates back to 1922. He converted to Anglican religion after writing The Wasteland, and all of a sudden we have The Hollow Man, Ash Wednesday, Murder in the Cathedral, that is works inspired by his new contact with God, with transcendency. So it's a new man. T.S. Eliot became a new man after his conversion, but he is remembered for The Wasteland, which was a real manifesto of modern reality, the aftermath of World War I. T.S. Eliot wanted to represent the spiritual sterility of the modern world before he converted to Anglicanism through a constant comparison with classical voices. This is what he called the mythical method. Eliot says we are faced with a panorama of futility, of sterility, a panorama of some kind of wasteland. So it is meaningless, it is absurd, we would say. There's no way we can find an order, a meaning, some kind of sense in this nonsensical world, which is modern world. The only way we can find a way, we can find our way to understand reality is making a constant comparison with what used to be Europe, a mythical past, tradition, and what is now the modern world. This is the mythical method. And T.S. Eliot praised James Joyce for the way he wrote and then published Ulysses, which from the very title reminds us of Homer's Odyssey. What did Joyce do? He followed the timeline, the storyline of Homer's Odyssey, even the chapters, the 18 chapters of Homer's Odyssey are followed in Ulysses, but we don't find Ulysses, Penelope, Telemachus. We find the modern versions of Ulysses, Penelope, and Telemachus, which are Leopold Bloom, Molly Bloom, and Stephen Dedalus. Ulysses was one day in Dublin, but it resembles step by step Homer's Odyssey. So Eliot said, instead of using the narrative method, we now use the mythical method. Constant comparison between a mythical past and a sterile, meaningless, absurd present. Another poetic method which Eliot used, and he borrowed that from Ezra Pound, was the objective correlative. That is, in order to get the impression of an emotion, there's no need to say what I feel. There's no need to present what I feel, but I have to use a set of objects, an image, as Ezra Pound would have said, an image, a concrete image, which makes me think, which makes the reader think of that emotion and only that. So it's the correlative of an emotion. An emotion has to be related to an object. Pound would say to an image, to a concrete image. Ungaretti and Montale in Italy will make a heavy use of the objective correlative. So a set of objects, images, references evoke one emotion and only that emotion. So the objective correlative derives from Ezra Pound's lesson. I would like to quote Pound. He said, literature is language charged with meaning. Language has to evoke an image directly, the direct treatment of the thing, whether subjective or objective. Of course, a subjective thing is an emotion, an objective thing is something outside the artist, the author. And another important feature of this poetic compression. You don't have to use any extra word that does not really contribute to the representation of the image, which in itself is related to an emotion. You don't have to use any extra word, not a single adjective, which does not reveal something. Okay, and we may quote Ezra Pound's In a Station of a Metro. It's just a two-line poem in the form of a haiku-like poem, which Pound borrowed from the Chinese and Japanese literature. A two-line poem which gives the image of concrete objects, faces, and the petals, the wet petals on a bow. This is In a Station of the Metro. As regards the role of the poet, artist, author, narrator, it depends if it's poetry or prose. T.S. Eliot stated that the poet's task is not to say, but to show, not to present, but to represent. This is what we may define as the impersonality of the artist. But why do we have all this? Because there had been the end of the positivistic faith in science and progress. Reality now has no shape, no order, unless you compare it to the order and the meaning of a mythical past.